I enjoy? Or what problem, again, this goes back to Naveen Jain and his book Moonshots, what problem do I want to solve? Right? We go with the initial thought of, okay, let's see. Who makes, who makes the most money? Doctors, lawyers, pharmacists, maybe marketing. And so we go in with the idea of, all right, I'm going to go into this certain sector area, either because their parents want you to, or that's what their parents do. And that's what most people or young people know, right? And so are exposed to. So one of the things that's really important is helping you understand and finding your purpose. We all have a purpose in this life, right? And so it's about first finding that love of what you do, those things that you want, in order to then get to doing something where you can wholeheartedly enjoy it and help other people at the same time. Now, a lot of times people say you have to find the need, right? I mean, I can love playing ping pong all day, right? Just an example. But what am I going to do with that, right? Like, what need am I fulfilling? How am I helping people in this? So sometimes in the beginning, you might have those things that you love, but you have to find the opportunity that's going to fall into that where there's a need to start. And I'll give you this example of who I was talking about before, Rami El-Batrawi. Yeah. When he was 17, he was homeless all those years. When he was 17, he made his first million. He went around and he found a need that wasn't being met. What was that need? Back then, there were these department stores, big department stores. So he went into these stores and he said, he asked people, what is it that you would like to have here? Or what do most people ask for here, but they don't provide the service? And it ended up being keys, like keys to open doors, keys. There was no service in this store to make keys. So he then took the action to say, I'm going to figure out a way to get a machine to put in this store. And then from there, one machine came two, and more stores and more stores and more stores. And he ended up going from being homeless to making his first million, right? So when we talk about specialized knowledge, we have to remember that, yes, it's important to have that niche of what you want, but not to limit ourselves by the idea that just because we don't have all of the knowledge, we can't find somebody who does. And we see that with Henry Ford. If you read Think and Grow Rich, even today with Naveen Jain, look at Elon Musk, like, they were not rocket scientists. They did not really, but they found the right people. They found the need. They found a problem. And so in doing that, I said, you know what, I'm going to go all in on myself for the first time in my life. And that's not an easy thing to do, because I basically picked up, sold everything, and with the idea that I knew I was going to eventually come back, but the way that God, the universe, was leading me, I was like, okay, I'm just going to go with it. Now it's hard because in the background was my family, who family loves you very dearly. However, they also sit there and they're like, you're crazy. What are you doing? Why don't you be responsible? Right?
Yeah.
But for the first time in my life, I had this inner feeling, this gut instinct that people often say, it comes from your gut. What's your gut tell you? Well, in that moment, I was like, I don't know. I've just got to go with the way that things are working out, and things just lined up perfectly. I couldn't have asked them to align any more perfect, for me to say, okay, this is what I need to do, right? And so I went there for the year thinking, okay, well, I'll go for the year and then I'll come back. Well, 1 year turned into 8 years. And eventually 3 years after moving there, I started my own school. And so in starting my own school, I then, that was a journey in and of itself because it took 3 years. So a lot of times people think they have this idea, they have this concept, they're going to go and they're just going to do it. But then when things don't exactly go the way they think it's going to, or they have this moment of, difficulty, they automatically stop and go backwards, right? I mean, we've all I've done that multiple times myself, right? But it took 3 years for me to get to that point, to open the first doors and have 7 students. I started with 7 students. I knew I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. I knew it, like I said before, deep within myself. But that was 3 years of, I didn't have a car. I was tutoring out of my own house. So I left the school after the first year and started doing students on my own from 7 days a week, morning till evening. And then, I built up those clients. I built up credibility. I started learning about the area and what the market was, and because there was limited quality education. This is the part of where my plan, while I had a plan and I was taking action, I wasn't so focused in that one of my plan. When the things didn't align, you have to be willing to move your plan a little bit, right? And I think that's an important piece there. It's not that the world was telling me, no, Christy, you can't open a school or you can't have this school. It was saying your original plan needs to be a little bit different. And I think that's where people tend to go backwards on or stop in reverse. And I always often like to call it like a GPS. And I heard a pastor once talk about it like this. When we go somewhere, we're on the highway, we're going, say there's a roadblock, right? And you have to go a different way. And so you have to plug into your GPS and it says recalculating, right? You're still going to get to the final destination. But the road that you're going to take to get there is going to be a little bit different. And so therefore, in listening to that and being in tune with everything that was going on around me, I then, was like, okay, I have to just alter my plan, right? Sometimes people are so fixed on that one plan that they automatically think, oh, well, it's not meant to be. And they stop. Don't really know either, especially in the United States. They put a lot of trust in the education system that is then producing, you have to go to school, you have to then go to college, you have to go to university. Well, that system and the way that it is only works for 1/3 of the students, right? When you look at the other 2/3, what happens, right? They're told that because they don't fit in that box, that, they aren't smart, they can't go on to do what everybody else, they have to go into a trade. That's not true at all. And I think that if anybody does research on some of the richest people in the world at this moment, many of them didn't graduate from college or university. Some didn't graduate high school. Some had, learning disabilities or were C or D students in school, right? So we can't say that our grades in high school are reflective of what we can do. It's whether or not we allow other people to tell us what we can or can't do. And I'll give one good example. Jim Quick, he is, memory coach, he helps people learn how to learn, right? And I use him with my students, but he grew up in kindergarten. He had a head injury. So for the entire time that he was going to school, he was considered the boy with the broken brain, right? Now, he grew up with this stigma, this thing. And then when he went to college, he was like, I can't do this. It's too hard for me. So what did he do? He went to find the information. There's got to be an easier way to learn how to learn, right? And he went and he deep dived into that. Now he is one of the best known people for teaching other people how to learn, right? And so that in and of itself is just incredible when we think about it. So if someone has told you your whole life that you can't, that you won't, you know what? Today, right now, if you're listening to it, let it go. Because the only way that you can't do something is if you tell yourself that you can't. It doesn't matter what other people think. It doesn't matter what other people hear. It doesn't matter what they say or believe about you. It's what you think and believe about yourself. But, again, sometimes things happen, the way they happen for a reason. However, when that reason comes, we don't really understand what that reason is until God or the universe shines their light on the reasoning for that. And I think in that moment, when parents, teachers, whatever, realize that kids don't have that fantasy idea anymore, they automatically start thinking, you need to be realistic. What is realistic, right? Because I don't know, there's a lot of people in this world who went out there and created amazing things. And so that was real for them. So why can't that be real for me? And so what happens is when we as teenagers or young adults start saying, I'm going to do this, and you think big and take on the world, you're ultimately being at some point pushed down, most young people, by the fact that you're being told by adults that that doesn't really happen for most people. You should play it safe. This is a really good job with a really good pay and a really good retirement, right? And you are ultimately being told, well, maybe I need to play it safe. It all depends on who you're surrounded by, right? And so when that happens, we automatically think, okay, well, this is what most people do. This is what's normal. And we go along with what our parents or society or our teachers tell us. And most of the time, 95% of the time, those people that are around us telling us these things are telling us that we need to limit ourselves. And so that is why I feel most people don't go there. And it's, however, failure is a part of life. And so it's rethinking what failure is. And so I loved it. And I learned this from a 13-year-old boy, that the FAIL, F-A-I-L, is an acronym for first attempt in learning. So fail is not failing. It does not mean you did something wrong. Failure is a learning experience. Every time you fail or something doesn't go the way you wanted it to, it's giving you that moment of growth to learn from it, right? So failure only exists really when you quit. That is the only moment of failure in anybody's life, because everything else is a learning experience. And so when we start having that conversation with children and adults, that, hey, you failed, okay, that's great. But what did you learn from it? It didn't go the way you planned. Okay, wonderful. How could you have done something different? What could you do to make it better? I mean, let's face it, most things that exist today, the car, the airplane, was a number of attempts of trying something and it not going the way they planned it to. And imagine if they gave up, right? Like somebody else would have done it. So I think that that's really the important piece there, is that we need to stop telling children, we need to stop telling ourselves that I'm too old, it's not meant for me, I'm, whatever it is, and start telling yourself, you know what? If I can, I can, and I will. And not to get all caught up in the fact that you may not know everything that you need to know. It will come. And finding that purpose. Everybody's life mission is different. But don't stop when you're first starting, because what you need to do to get, to feed your family, to do whatever you need to do, doesn't align with your purpose. Because sometimes we need to do those small jobs, but always be working towards that main goal that you have. And that happens, and that will happen. Don't get rid of that. And that's why even in Napoleon Hill, when he says, the very first thing is that burning desire, right? If you don't love what you're working towards, you're not going to continue to do it. There has to be such that, my God, when this works, it's going to change the world. It's going to be completely just something that you never even thought of or imagined, right? And so that's a part of it. And then, getting your thoughts aligned with it, positive mental attitude, right? Getting out the negative and bringing in the positive, and you have to work on that. But then you have to go that next step, because without the action, without the plan, you're not going to do anything. So the desire will lead to the positive thoughts. The positive thoughts then need to lead to the action, because no action there's nothing there, right? To put it to. And when I say a plan, you don't necessarily have to know exactly how, right? My plan changed, everybody's plan changes along the way. You just have to be open-minded to the fact that, your map might look different in the end than the one that you drew in the beginning.